In early 2015, just past the height of Gamergate and all it entailed, the Choices Matter adventure game and the industry at large was in a rough spot. There were, in effect, only two companies really making that kind of game: Telltale Games and David Cage's Quantic Dream. Telltale had seemingly revived the adventure game genre with its critically acclaimed Walking Dead and Wolf Among Us series, but they were quickly taking on more licensed contracts than they could handle, which sometimes resulted in games like the beloved Tales from the Borderlands, but also resulted in Game of Thrones, a Telltale series, Minecraft Story Mode, The Walking Dead, Minecraft Story Mode, Law and Order Legacies. Hey, anybody remember Guardians of the Galaxy, a Telltale series? Because I sure fucking don't. Quantic Dream, on the other hand, was being Quantic Dream. So, churning out the usual overly pretentious drivel they usually do. Only their most recent game, Beyond Two Souls, was not only panned, but had attracted considerable controversy over the fact that David Cage had commissioned a fully realistic, 3D new model of actor Elliot Page without his consent. Fucking really cool of you, Dave. It was in this extremely demoralized environment, with game studios unwilling to take big thematic risks, wanting to avoid another months-long misogynistic consumer revolt, that a small French developer, Don't Nod, released their own Choices Matter adventure game, Life is Strange. This was a really big gamble, as there was already a French developer who specializes in these games, and everyone fucking hates him. But on top of having to overcome the disability of being French, Don't Nod had decided to center their narrative on a female protagonist, and explicitly tackle queer themes. By all rights, releasing this game so close on the heels of such a massive misogynistic backlash should have marked this game for death. But while it did receive some grumbling from exactly the kind of people you'd expect, the game did extremely well critically and in the market, revealing that despite the loudness of Gamergate assholes, there was and is a space in the industry for these types of narratives. It is exactly the kind of earnest Tumblr-core shit that the Gamergate crowd hates, and it just so happens it's one of my favorite games ever made. But all good things must come with a caveat, and unfortunately for Life is Strange, that caveat was Square Enix. Their publisher. Double unfortunately for Don't Nod, when Square Enix gets hold of a good thing, they never let it go. As the development of Life is Strange 2 was wrapping up, a game I haven't played but have heard really good things about, I promise, Don't Nod pretty much said they were done with Life is Strange, and had no desire to return to the franchise. But Square wasn't about to let this money train stop rolling. So while the development of Life is Strange 2 was finishing up, Square Enix tapped Deck 9 to make a prequel to the original Life is Strange, and push it through development as quickly as possible. This meant that Life is Strange Before the Storm was actually released before Life is Strange 2, even pushing through a voice actor strike to get it out the door. Since Don't Nod has ceased having an active hand in the franchise since Life is Strange 2, Deck 9 has made all subsequent Life is Strange games, Before the Storm, and Double Exposure. Fan and critical reactions range from positive to mixed, and then negative. So Life is Strange isn't actually one franchise, it's two. But that raises the question: what did this landmark series for queer representation in video games get so right under its first developer, that its second has had an increasingly hard time trying to replicate? The next two videos will be my attempt to answer this question, beginning with the game that started it all. So, I've talked a lot about this point about what Life is Strange did for the industry, and the disconnect between Don't Nod and Deck 9. But I think it's important I actually establish what the game even is, and why it was so revolutionary for the adventure genre. Life is Strange focuses on Max Caulfield, an 18-year-old senior attending the fictional but prestigious Blackwell Academy. One day, while in her photography class, she has a premonition of a storm hitting her nearby hometown of Arcadia Bay. She wakes up and goes to the bathroom, only to watch her estranged childhood friend walk into the same bathroom and try to extort fellow student and psychotic nepo baby Nathan Prescott for money. This results in Nathan pulling a gun on Chloe and fucking shooting her. As Max watches her friend die for the first time,
sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
She extends her hand and rewinds time, ending up back in her photography class. She then uses her knowledge of events to pull the fire alarm in the bathroom to prevent Chloe's death. This establishes what made Life is Strange the landmark game that it was, and what makes it such a great queer game. The ability to, at any point, for any reason, rewind time.
Hi, Brooke. Let me guess. You want to fly my drone?
Let's first tackle that from a standard gameplay/thematic perspective. The type of game that Life is Strange followed was fundamentally Telltale's formula. You are presented with a choice and a timer, go with your gut, and live with the choices. If you want to see how things could play out differently, start another save file. What Don't Nod introduced was the ability to let players see all the different outcomes and deliberate before moving forward, to, in effect, give players infinite time to make their decision. You might think that decision defeats the whole purpose of the genre. You're basically giving the player all the time in the world to make the best possible decision. But as Life is Strange is quickly going to beat you over the head with, there's no such thing as the best decision. Like, sure, obviously you're going to rewind time to make sure this girl doesn't get hit in the face with mud or football, or to make sure this dog doesn't get fucking plowed by an 18-wheeler. No one chooses to let the dog get hit by a truck. But do you take the blame for your friend's weed, or should you stay hidden? Do you euthanize someone who clearly wants to die, or do nothing to avoid that blood on your hands? Or, more crucially, do you save the town, or do you save the girl? We'll get back to that one. Every decision you make comes at a cost. Choosing one thing might cost you something later down the line, or it might cost you something right now, but eventually, you're gonna have to pay the piper. You can go back and change your mind as much as you want, but eventually, things are just gonna have to play out. What Don't Nod has done here is harness the player's indecision to further the difficulty of these choices, which is more tense and nail-biting than any timer could be. Now, that's all well and good from a non-queer reading of this game's central mechanic, but what could playing with time and linearity have to do with a queer reading of this game? In the last video I made in this series, I discussed how Night in the Woods used liminality and failure to examine the queer condition. And Life is Strange does this to a certain extent too. Max and Chloe, whose relationship the game focuses on the most, don't belong anywhere except with each other. Max hasn't made any real friends at school, getting along well enough with everyone except the two people who actively hate her, and just doing okay academically, but not really forming a real connection with anyone until she reunites with Chloe in the parking lot of her school after Nathan tries to beat her up. As for Chloe, well, she's a weed-smoking high school dropout whom time and space can't seem to stand based on how many times it tries to literally kill her. She's in debt to a drug dealer, she has a rather strained relationship with her mother after the death of her father, and an even worse relationship with her stepfather, David. There is a queer reading of Life is Strange that largely falls in line with the one I did for Night in the Woods. Max is constantly trying and failing to find the perfect timeline. The one where her childhood friend/lover gets to live, and she gets to save the town/school and find acceptance there. Only to discover, similar to May, that she can't have it all. She can either try to live within the system and let Chloe die, or she can define her own success with Chloe and ride off into the sunset at the cost of her hometown and a normal life. But quite frankly, I already did that reading with Night in the Woods, and I think there's something to be gained from looking at what Life is Strange does by examining not the queer relationship with failure, but the queer relationship with time. I realize that time and queerness seem like two very unrelated concepts, and that I'm throwing a lot at you here, which unfortunately means I'm gonna have to get boring and define a couple things here. I know, I'm sorry. Webster's dictionary defines chrononormativity as could you imagine? God no. In her book, Time Binds, Queer Temporalities, Queer Histories, author Elizabeth Freeman discusses the concept of chrononormativity, which boils down to the idea that our concept of time and its passage is measured in milestones. Puberty, educational milestones, first love, first job, first kids, losing your parents, buying your first home, etc. Obviously, these aren't in order. She describes it. Chrononormativity is a mode of implantation, a technique by which institutional forces come to seem like somatic facts. Schedules, calendars, time zones, and even wristwatches inculcate what the sociologist Evertar Zubraval calls hidden rhythms, forms of temporal experience that seem natural to those whom they privilege. Manipulations of time convert historically specific regimes of asymmetrical power into seemingly ordinarily bodily tempos and routines, which in turn organize the value and meaning of time. The advent of wage work, for example, entailed a violent retemporalization of bodies once tuned to the seasonal rhythms of agricultural labor. While Jack Halberstam focused on how a failure to meet these milestones frames queer people in a societal context as failures, Freeman is more concerned about how a failure to meet these milestones, or in some cases, repeating these milestones, does to somebody's sense of passing time. Say, for example, you're trans. A radical concept in this day and age, I know. If you come to the realization after puberty, and you make the decision to medically transition, you're, in effect, experiencing puberty a second time as you grow into an altered body and identity. It can give you the sense that time is repeating itself. Looping, you could say. I'm not apologizing for that one. But these delayed, repeated, or not met milestones exist in a variety of different ways for differing parts of the queer community. You might not have a first love till after high school or college if you live in a particularly repressive household. You might even lose your parents in a way other than death if they cut you off for your sexuality or gender identity. You might never have kids, which is what society demands of a lot of us, especially women. If you're bisexual, you might have two first loves. If you take a look at the community's relationship with time, not just the individual, there might exist gaps in the collective history, due to laws making it risky to be out of the closet, and thus hard to establish a collective identity, or to a disease that the government refuses to deal with, claiming a lot of people before their story can become recorded or part of the collective queer conscience. Life is Strange is fundamentally about two people who cannot live on normal time. Despite all of Max's intervention, the universe is just dead set on fucking killing Chloe, man. There's obviously the scene at the bathroom in the beginning, but that's not even the only time Chloe gets shot. Without your intervention, or sometimes because of it, she can get shot twice more in the game. Once by dicking around with her dad's revolver, and once by Mr. Jefferson when it's revealed he has something to do with Rachel Amber's death. Spoilers for a 10-year-old game, by the way. Hell, the ending choice isn't even the only time you can kill Chloe by your own hand. Even if you take her seemingly inevitable crash course with death off the table, Chloe is not set out to live in normal time. She loses her dad a lot sooner than most people would, drops out of high school, and is pretty much set on the path of self-destruction. She will never experience the milestones society has set out for her. And as for Max, Max's story is about someone who is on track to chrononormativity, finding themselves wildly derailed and then working towards and ultimately failing to find the path back to it. She was supposed to graduate under the tutelage of a prestigious photography teacher, the aforementioned serial killer, and become a prestigious photographer herself. Instead, she starts to experience time in a way she never has before, and the more she fights it, tries to control it, the worse things get. The game spends 4 acts as Max uses her time powers to help bring Chloe closure over her friend Rachel so that they can both return to a normal sense of time/life, only for it to go wildly out of control. A girl, Kate Marsh, tries to kill herself, and you're forced to try and save her without your time powers. Dead whales begin to wash up on beaches, it snows in 80-degree weather, and in the 4th chapter, 2 moons appear in the sky. Your pursuit of the perfect ending has unforeseen consequences. For example, who'd send a doggy to his widow death? He's such a good boy, yes he is. But it turns out, when you go to confront Frank, Chloe, Nathan, and Rachel's drug dealer for information in Chapter 4, the only way, literally the only way it'll resolve peacefully, is if he had thrown the bone for the dog to catch in the middle of the road in the previous chapter. This is just so sadistic. I remember my friend accidentally killed the dog on his first playthrough, only for me to tell him that was the only way to deal with Frank peacefully, and he lost his goddamn mind. It's great. Don't ever change, don't nod. But through all this, Max and Chloe are shielded from the worst of it. The linearity of their time begins to break down as their past of being childhood friends begins to merge with the present of their burgeoning romantic relationship. At least, if the player goes down that route. But, I mean, come on, if you've played this game, I absolutely know what route you went down. You aren't fucking fooling me. In his video Superposition, The Genre of Life is Strange, past guest of the channel and video essayist Innuendo Studios described Life is Strange as essentially two stories. And his delivery is just so spot on that I'm just gonna let the clip play.
It is, in essence, two entirely different stories rolled up in the same package. These two stories contain all the same characters and all the same plot points, but exist in wildly different genres and have wildly different themes. For the first 2.5-ish episodes, you appear to be playing a tender coming-of-age story, while the second 2.5-ish are a Lynchian psychodrama that seems designed with the express purpose of complicating, then rejecting, and ultimately attempting to devour the coming-of-age story and erase all records of its existence.
Now, prior to the literature I read for this video, this was my generally accepted take. But now I'm inclined to believe that disconnect is the point. Which, to his credit, is something he offers up as a possibility. But given that the end of Act 4 is where Max really loses all control, the disconnect between the coming-of-age story and Lynchian psychosexual drama makes perfect sense. It is where she realizes none of what she's done so far with her powers has resulted in positive change. All that it's gotten her is the truth that Rachel Amber has died at the hands of an extremely voyeuristic and sadistic serial killer, and that she's not even close to his only victim. The one unequivocally good thing you do in this story is where the game strips away your powers. That's why I like Mr. Studio's interpretation that Life is Strange is a deconstruction of the Choices Matter genre. At almost every juncture past the midpoint of this game, it is asking you, why would you even want the power to make decisions like these? Who are you or Max to be vested with such power? Where I differ from Mr. Studio's interpretation is that the Lynchian psychosexual drama is not a clean break from the earlier game, but rather the natural evolution of what using these powers would get you. Max, and therefore the player, are like the frog in the boiling pot in that really fucked up experiment that's supposed to teach... I'm not sure what it's supposed to teach, actually. The point is, by the time you notice the story shift, it's too late. There's no going back to that coming-of-age story where you use your cool powers to fix what's broken about Chloe and yourself. In parallel to Max's story, and with the theme of chrononormativity, Mr. Jefferson is obsessed with capturing these pockets of time with his victims' true selves. He believes that all photographed subjects are staged, unable to present anything but a caricature of themselves. He chooses young women he believes to be naive and full of promise in order to capture the moment that naivete turns to despair. At this point, Max is trying desperately to travel through Polaroids to find the perfect timeline, one where Chloe lives, where Mr. Jefferson and Nathan are arrested for their crimes, and where she gets to prove herself to be a real photographer. To finally live on normal time. And then the storm still comes anyway. After eventually escaping Mr. Jefferson for realsies this time, you make your way towards Chloe through Arcadia Bay in the middle of the storm, and a cerebral hallucinatory journey where Max is confronted by her alternate self, chiding her for ever thinking she could have it both ways. And finally, you get to Chloe at the lighthouse, back where the game first started. At this point, Max, tired and weary from trying to find the perfect timeline where everybody is happy and Chloe gets to live, informs Chloe that she's out of options, and despairs in the fact that she's the cause of the tornado that's going to destroy Arcadia Bay. Chloe, in a rare moment of clarity for her, realizes that she still has the butterfly Polaroid that Max took at the beginning of the game, and that Max can use this to go back to when Chloe initially died and let it happen, in order to prevent the storm from ever coming. She recognizes that she can't be trusted with that choice, since it's her life on the line, and tells Max that whatever she picks, whether she chooses to save the town or save Chloe, she'll trust whatever decision she makes.
Chloe! I can't make this choice! No, Max. You're the only one who can.
Now, this ending has been characterized in a lot of ways. Owing to the fact that you can spend more time with the people of Blackwell and Arcadia Bay, people like Kate or Warren, this choice can be interpreted as, who do you love more, the town or Chloe? This is certainly how my friend interpreted this choice on his first playthrough a couple of years ago, and chose to save Chloe because of how attached he had gotten to her. Our friend, Mr. Studios, characterizes the ending thusly.
This final decision is the game offering you two very appropriate endings for the two very different games you've been playing. Per the themes of the coming-of-age story of the Germanic persuasion, Max's arc is learning to sacrifice for the greater good. She can't have it all, she can't satisfy everyone, and sometimes doing right by your society means giving up something you love. In the battle between personal happiness and responsibility, responsibility wins. Sometimes the wild love is someone you have to let go of. Be grateful for your time together and kiss her goodbye. She knows what's right. It's better this way. Per the themes of the Lynchian psychodrama, have you fucking lost it? What about the last 12 odd hours of gameplay in which trying to change the past universally makes the present worse gave you the idea that going back one more time could possibly fix anything? Have you learned nothing?
However, I would like to offer a different interpretation. The choice Max has offered here is not just between the town or Chloe. It is the choice to adhere to chrononormativity or to defy it. It is, on a larger and more fantastical scale, the choice many queer people make when they decide to live outside of standard time, to destroy the world as they once knew it. People are usually of the mind that the ending where you choose to save the town is better, usually arguing from a moral standpoint, arguing that no one life, no matter how cool and punk rock it is worth thousands of other lives. There's also the fact that some people consider the Save the Town ending to be narratively tighter and more satisfying than the one where you choose to save Chloe. And on both of these points, when you view the game from a standard interpretation, I agree. If you're ever in the position to choose between your lover and an entire town, please choose the town. But I think there's something to be said for saving Chloe. It's not as tear-jerking, but I think it speaks relatively to the widespread queer experience of choosing to turn your back on the place that couldn't accept you. It's just usually, that choice isn't so deadly. But that's what makes it all the more bittersweet. That choice, whether it's cutting off your family or community for not being accepting, choosing to come out of the closet, or choosing to transition, it suddenly makes you feel like your life has begun again, which suddenly gives you a strained relationship with your past. The plus 20 years where you are on the way to realizing who you were. It just begs the same question that Chloe and Max ask themselves the entire game, and as they're presumably asking themselves as they drive through the ruins of Arcadia Bay. Where'd all the time go?
dressed up like a pillow, so she's always